It is an allergy season day, so if I stop to sneeze or blow my nose here, please excuse me. The pollen is definitely out in Boston. I think the West Coast may have started a little bit earlier. I remember in California it was always more, but it is what it is. All right, today for our live stream, I wanted to dive into membership a little bit more, the membership criteria, whether or not you even need to claim it, whether or not you want to claim it, even if you can. There's a lot that's going around about memberships right now that I think is interesting. A lot of it is somewhat misleading. And there's some important things to clarify here. And I guess I'll go with the clarification first. And that is, membership is a difficult criteria to win, period. It's not like judge role. It's not like authorship. It's not even really like critical role or original contributions where you can make an argument. It is just bottom line a very difficult criteria to win. There is not any favorable federal court litigation around this criteria that holds USCIS to any particular standard or interpretation. USCIS will routinely ignore its own policy manual on this criteria. And they do, to some degree, apply a plain language reading, but in a way that is so strict that it almost defeats the purpose of the criteria itself. Like there are many officers who believe that the bylaws have to say the phrase outstanding contributions in order for them to even consider the membership to fit with the criteria. In response to USCIS's rigidity, we have seen a lot of membership organizations pop up that are more or less created for the purpose of EB-1A, right? I mean, they are legitimate organizations in that they offer a legitimate title, a legitimate membership. You join a body of other professionals who are at the top of their field. But the sole reason for the existence of these organizations seems to be for EB-1A purposes. For right now, most of them do not appear to be fraudulent in any way. They do go through a very rigorous vetting process. They have set these up to where the fellowship or the other title or the membership designation does fulfill the requirements. But there is a question on whether or not it really designates extraordinary ability. Like, is this evidence of extraordinary ability, or is it something that people just do to pad their record for profile building? I'm a little skeptical of some of these organizations. I think USCIS is too, although they've gotten themselves into this position by demanding that the bylaws have this specific phrase, which means that all of the real organizations are out of the running or out of the picture, kind of forcing people to join these other organizations that have popped up, these newer organizations. But just be careful. Make sure that when you are applying for a fellowship or applying to some kind of membership or applying to a committee, make sure that they are very seriously taking the requirements into account, rigorously vetting the applications, and making sure that they really are only admitting people who, according to their bylaws, have made outstanding contributions to the field. That is very, very important. If the organizations themselves are found to admit people who don't really meet those standards, then the organizations can be flagged for fraud, and then all of the fellowships that they grant can be flagged for fraud. And to my knowledge, none of that has happened because, like I said, most of these organizations do take it seriously, and they are only admitting people who have meritorious profiles. But it always opens the door for fraud. So it's something that you should be aware of and paying attention to. All right. So with that being said, it was kind of a rabbit trail on the existence of new organizations just for EB-1A. But on the main question, do you need to claim membership to have a strong EB-1A case? The answer is no. You really do not need to claim memberships. And I will say, I think it's nice when people do claim memberships. I probably claim it or want to claim it or advise that people profile build towards it more than a lot of other attorneys do because I overvalue it. But usually when I'm talking about people getting memberships, I'm not really talking about applying for a litany of fellowships. You don't need 10 fellowships to your name to prove your extraordinary ability. It does help, and I do file cases and claim membership on that basis. But usually in the profile building context, what I'm looking for is for someone to prove that they have been admitted to some kind of discrete group or team or committee where everyone else in their field would acknowledge and recognize that they are extraordinary, that only extraordinary people can be part of this group. So even if an organization or a team or a committee or a loosely organized volunteer group, even if they don't really have bylaws, or even if they have bylaws that don't say original contributions are required, it is still good for the EB-1A case, because even if USCIS doesn't consider it under the membership criterion, it looks very, very good for final merits. Like, being part of these groups and organizations, it gives a sense of legitimacy to your case as far as you having generated a claim outside of just the company that you're working for. It's also a really good source of high-level professional references. These memberships can also lead to additional high-level, really prestigious, solid judging activities, sometimes some publishing or authorship criteria opportunities and things like that. So there's a lot of value to pursuing some of these memberships and being part of that higher level invited tier of committee members, board advisors, team members, group members, etc. So don't discount membership completely, but I wouldn't necessarily treat it like something that you have to obtain, like you have to obtain this fellowship or that fellowship. Look at it more in the context of your whole profile building. And ask yourself, like, what groups do people who I admire, what groups do they join? Who does my manager admire? What groups do they join? And look at it from that angle and try to get in with some of those groups. It's much, much better and more effective for your profile in the long run than just pursuing a list of fellowships. All right, so that's just general advice. And I will say, if you do have a bunch of fellowships, it's still good for your case. You don't need to feel bad about applying for all of them. All of the main ones do have really rigorous vetting processes. They take a long, long time to grant you the membership. They usually interview you, require a whole questionnaire, require expert references. And for all of the big ones, all of the main ones, I've definitely seen potential clients get denied. So I know that their vetting is rigorous and that they are only accepting people who really prove outstanding contributions. So don't discount the ones that everyone's applying for. Still apply for them. Just branch out, expand out a little bit where you're looking at more niche opportunities, things that are very, very specific to your field, and things that you know are admired in your field. To be honest, most of these fellowships aren't super admired. They're just a thing. A lot of professionals outside of the whole EB-1A profile building community don't even really know about them. And that's why their value is limited, even if they're still good for claiming on the EB-1A case. All right, Jason, am I missing anything big as far as memberships? Questions that come up before we dive into the questions on the live stream here?
So one question that comes up a lot is, how do I know if an organization is legitimate just based on its bylaws? Like, you'll see a lot of websites that don't really talk about the activities that members are doing as part of the organization.
Yes, this is a good question. And this is why I think USCIS was not very thoughtful when it started determining membership just solely based on bylaws. It's hard for you to tell. It's hard for me to tell. Honestly, it's hard for anyone to tell if this organization has any value in your field or industry if all you're looking at is the bylaws. So if the bylaws have the phrase outstanding contributions, it's probably something you can consider for the EB-1A. But I would recommend that you kind of network with people who have that fellowship or that other membership title and ask them what the vetting process was like and if it felt legit. I would also kind of explore the organization's reputation more generally. If they've popped up just in the last few years, it's not really going to be a prestigious organization, at least not yet. If they have a long history, so some longevity, and you can see that there are some really famous people who have the fellowship or the membership designation, that's a better indication. Again, it's not everything, but it's at least a better indication. But I would also kind of explore what other people in your field think about the organization. If other people in your field are viewing it as kind of sketchy, it might be just an EB-1A profile building organization. But if other people say, oh yeah, we know this fellowship, we know this organization, they do some really good stuff, you can be a lot more confident when you apply for membership there. So there's not an easy way to do it. I think that's the bottom line. Like there's not just something that you can look up. There's not a real litmus test. It's a lot more fluid than that. And it's going to be a lot more fluid for everyone, for you, for the attorney involved, for USCIS as well. And that's always going to be evolving and changing in the future. So it's important to keep up and do current research whenever you are applying for one of these organizations.
So we can dive right into questions. This says, it's nice to be here. Caesar asks, how can you fulfill this criteria in civil engineering? There are no membership organization that allows you to join based on being on top of your field. There are in electrical engineering, for example, IEEE, but non civil engineering.
Yeah, so this is a good question. And this kind of highlights, I think, how many of these have popped up in tech. So in computer science, electrical engineering, those kinds of things. And the pervasiveness of them in tech, I think, compared to the rest of the fields, definitely means that EB-1A is driving some of the existence of these organizations. So Caesar, I don't think that this is necessarily a hindrance for you. The organizations that you join don't really need to be standard within the field of mechanical engineering. For you, doing things like joining the advisory board of a university for their mechanical engineering program, that would be something really good for membership. If you get appointed to a really prestigious editorial board where you are like one of 5, with the chief editor and everything like that, that can qualify for membership. If you are appointed to some kind of technical committee that is reviewing or promulgating standards in mechanical or civil engineering, that's also really good. There are, I think, advisory boards. They might have different names or titles, but that review and kind of advise on major government projects, city projects, that kind of thing, that can work really well. You don't have to join an organization and get the designation of member and get a card that says you have membership there. The important thing for the membership criterion is that you are part of a discrete group of people, and that the entry point to joining that group of people means that you need to have made outstanding contributions to your field and be recognized as a top expert. So there are plenty of opportunities available, but none of them are going to be standard. Like, it's not like you can just do a Google search and find an organization and join it. This is going to be more networking based for you. And you're going to have to really push and find those opportunities if you want to claim the membership criterion. Side note here, IEEE senior membership is really not good for EB-1A. USCIS routinely rejects it. The bylaws are not strong enough really to claim it. Sometimes there will be some cases where that's put in, but usually those cases are claiming 6 or 7 criteria. So even if people are claiming it, they can't reasonably say that that's the reason the case was approved. So even if you get, all kinds of success stories from people who had and claimed IEEE senior member, just remember that they probably claimed a lot of criteria and they can't really determine the reason that the case was approved. I do know, though, that this is almost always questioned in RFEs. Like there's not been a single case where IEEE senior member has been claimed to my knowledge where the RFE didn't question that. Like the RFE has never said membership is accepted. They've always questioned it. So it's not a strong point. If you're looking at IEEE as the end goal, definitely rethink that strategy, because it can present opportunities. It can be an important professional profile building tool just in general for your career, but it is not a good qualification for EB-1A.
Callistus asks, I have a question about the membership criteria in a situation where membership is open to those with general qualifications, and then a much limited membership that must meet certain competencies. In the second case, the applicant must, through a national certification panel, and demonstrate all competencies before he moves from the general membership to board certified.
Yeah, so there's a few different layers here. It is fine if the membership organization has a general tier that almost anyone can join, and that you're proving membership by moving up into a higher tier. That's fine. That can qualify for membership. So in IEEE, for example, you have general members, then you have senior members, and then you have fellows, and then you have, I forget, it might be distinguished or eminent, something. So there's definitely tiers and layers. It's not that moving up to a higher tier kind of guarantees that you can claim membership. You still need to examine the organization's bylaws, rules and requirements, vetting process, and all of that for the next tier. And that needs to satisfy USCIS's requirements that members have demonstrated outstanding contributions to their field. Keep in mind, though, most licensing schemes, even if it's like a full licensure and even if it's considered to be an impressive professional qualification, will not qualify for memberships. Likewise, most certification processes will not qualify. You're mentioning here board certified. That, I mean, I don't know exactly what organizations you're thinking of, but this is not something that I think will qualify. And then you're also mentioning that you have to demonstrate competencies. It's great that you need to demonstrate the competencies because this can be an element for the EB-1A case, but the important thing to claim the membership criteria is not that you're demonstrating a certain level of professional competence, it's that you have made outstanding contributions to your field, and that is being recognized through your admission to a member of whatever group, committee, tier level this is. So if the bylaws for this organization say you only need to pass these competencies, USCIS is not going to consider it for membership criteria. If the bylaws say you have to demonstrate these competencies and have demonstrated outstanding contributions to the field, at that point it's really good for membership. And then most bylaws might say something kind of in between, where maybe you can make the argument, but USCIS could always push back against it. So this isn't really a guaranteed thing. I don't think this will qualify for membership, but there is some potential here with some additional analysis.
Does being a founder of a nonprofit work as evidence?
For membership, probably not. I mean, I could potentially see an argument in some very rare cases, but in most cases this would not work. Being a founder of a nonprofit can count for critical role or leading role, so leading or critical role. And I've definitely claimed that before in prior cases. Sometimes it can also count for original contributions if the nonprofit is really contributing something unique and innovative to the field, and if you're really the driver behind that. So this kind of work can factor well into the EB-1A, but not generally under the membership criterion.
Schlock asks, sorry going late, I do not know if this is covered. Recently, through an AO decision, USCIS officer said that IEEE senior membership is not sufficient to claim the membership criteria. Is that true? Should you still use IEEE senior membership in your application knowing that one officer has denied it?
Yeah, so this was answered a couple questions ago, but in general, I do not recommend claiming IEEE senior membership at all in the EB-1A case. I think it's become kind of a red flag. It's not like every case that claims it will be denied. So like I mentioned, a lot of people will have claimed this and will say their cases were approved, and that's great. But a lot of them are claiming 6 or 7 criteria, and IEEE senior membership is routinely questioned in RFEs. Like if you submit a case with IEEE senior membership and it gets an RFE, that RFE is not going to say membership is accepted. It will always question the IEEE senior membership. And that's because the bylaws are just not strong enough. They indicate a certain level of expertise, but they don't indicate expertise at the top of the field, and they don't require outstanding contributions to the field. So in general, I do not claim this in EB-1A cases, and it's not generally something that I would do for EB-1A profile building, unless you're trying to leverage it to get publishing opportunities, speaking opportunities, and other things that you're going to claim for other EB-1A criteria.
So Caesar asks, the biggest organization in civil engineering is the ASCE, but they don't have fellowship level like IEEE?
Yeah, so membership in the organization is not likely to qualify. I'm not super familiar with ASCE. I think it's come up from time to time in cases, but it's not something I've claimed. If they have committees, though, that are involved in promulgating standards or settling and publishing best practice guides, or doing some of these other things where they are guiding the industry in some way, joining that group could qualify for membership, as long as you're demonstrating the other members of that group are also extraordinary, and that to join the group, you really do need to demonstrate outstanding contributions to the field. So there may be some opportunity there, even if the organization isn't really set up with EB-1A in mind. And again, I do like those better. Like I get a little skeptical when something seems to be set up perfectly for EB-1A, because it's not like USCIS it took it's not like they took all the situations in all the industries into mind when publishing the regulations. They just threw in the phrase outstanding contributions, and what that has come to mean through various adjudications years and years later is something I think they did not intend originally. So if an organization is really legit, like ASCE, and if you can find like yourself part of a smaller group, you can probably claim that, and it's probably really good for final merits, even if USCIS won't consider it for membership.
In your experience, based on bylaws, is PCS or IET fellow membership acceptable for the membership criteria?
Yes, so these are accepted a lot of the time. They're not necessarily accepted all of the time. Looking at BCS and IET's bylaws, there is definitely room for USCIS to question, especially if they're applying that really plain language analysis that wants the bylaws to have the specific phrase. But I'm very comfortable claiming BCS and IET in EB-1A petitions because there is a lot to work with, and they're both long-standing organizations. They both have really, really good reputations, and both of them do go through really vigorous vetting processes. So a lot of my cases, I think, yeah, not half, but maybe close to half will have either BCS or IET. And I do think it's good for the EB-1A.
So Robbie says, hello, Amber. Rob asks, how about getting PMP certification? Will it help for membership?
No, unfortunately not. Most certifications do not qualify for membership. There are some rare situations where I come across one where I think we have a decent argument, but PMP does not qualify.
Robbie asks, please, Amber, can someone apply for EB-2NIW as an international PhD student holding an F1 visa?
So yes, you can apply. I have been recommending more and more that PhD students wait until they graduate so that they have the PhD credential and they have some publication and some expanded publication record to back it up. It's not like that's true in every single case, but keep in mind that EB-1A is a bit stricter now. So some PhD students will qualify, probably fewer than in past years. And I would recommend getting an individual assessment on your case to see if the advice is to wait and graduate or if the advice is to file now.
Humberto asks, probably another topic. My I-140 for EB-1A is review active from on December 3rd, 2024 in Texas. Do you know when it's time to respond me?
So I'm assuming this is regular processing, and if regular processing, they're routinely taking 8 months or more to do the EB-2NIWs. Sometimes you will get a faster decision, but I would give them at least 8 months before you are following up.
Nane asks, does this endeavor sound good to you for EB-2NIW? To advance and manage the implementation of radio systems within mission-critical data center infrastructure, focusing on improving communication reliability, scalability, and security.
So yes, it does sound good, but keep in mind I'm analyzing that knowing nothing about your profile. A lot of people come to me trying to craft a proposed endeavor, but they're crafting the proposed endeavor kind of in a silo. And proposed endeavors always need to be tied with what you can realistically do. And it's even better if they're tied to what you have accomplished in your background and in your career so far. So yes, it sounds good, but I don't want to give the advice that it's a good proposed endeavor for you without seeing the rest of the case details.
What's this says? Thanks for the attention. Please, what if the board certified membership demands a level of expertise like judging the work of others? As chair of a certification team, will that count as outstanding work?
There's an argument to be made here. It is tenuous. It's not like every officer would accept that argument. But the more of these kinds of qualifications are required, the more strength your argument that it essentially requires outstanding contributions without saying the phrase outstanding contributions, the more that argument holds true. So you can look at this. Again, I don't want to endorse it without seeing the exact organization and the bylaws that you're referring to, but it's at least a little bit more workable than what I said before.
Grub says along ASCE questions, there's AREMA, and they have committees to become a member of committee. You need certain years of experience. Being a member, you contribute to refining and updating the rules and standards for railway engineering.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, those kinds of committees should work. I think if you're presenting bylaws that indicate that only a level of experience is required, that goes against your argument. But typically they'll say a number of years of experience is required and a strict vetting process. So you can put in as judged by national and international experts in the field. So I am thinking this probably works if you're a member of one of these committees. That's not it doesn't mean it's a guarantee to work because they're not going to have that phrase outstanding contribution. But there should be opportunity there at least. And even if it's not accepted for membership, doing that kind of participation where you're setting rules and standards and all of that looks really good for final merits. And sometimes can even factor into an original contributions argument as well. So it's all good for the case.
Daniel says, in my experience with successfully claiming the membership criteria using the fellowship of the IET and the fellowship of the British Computer Society, it is one thing to have the fellowship, it is another thing to ensure one meets the plain language requirement. Proven membership requires outstanding contribution, bylaws judged by national and international experts. As a fellowship membership assessor, I can attest the application process is stringent and uses national and international experts. Can you confirm being a membership assessor then therefore meets the judging criteria? That is something I used to meet the judging criteria.
Yes, they will definitely meet judging criteria. And the higher level the fellowship is, the better it is. So the IET fellowship assessor should be really, really good for the EB-1A case. I will say as well, IEEE senior membership may not be good on its own for membership, but the people who review those applications can also claim judge role. It's not maybe as good or as prestigious or as strong as IET fellowship reviewers, but it still works for the judge role. So again, like IEEE senior membership and all of that, it can present additional opportunities that are good for EB-1A. So I don't necessarily discourage applying for it, but I do discourage mentioning it under the membership criteria in your EB-1A case. But IET fellowship is something I routinely claim. So if you're an IET fellow, you can claim it under membership. And if you're an IET fellowship assessor, you can claim it under judge.
And he asks, is BICS high PMI membership valued by USCIS for an EB-2NIW?
So I'm not sure what the first acronym is, but PMI is not super valued. In the EB-2NIW context, though, it's a little bit different. So you don't have the same kind of stringent membership requirements. I would say having PMI membership on its own is not great. It is something, like I might put the membership certificate in, I might mention you're a PMI member, but it would be even better if you are involved in some kind of activity for PMI. Like if you are giving webinars or workshops, or if you are attending or volunteering at some of their events. Or if you're involved in one of their mentorship programs. Like any activity that you do to expand your participation in the membership organization is really good in the EB-2NIW context.
Humberto says, appreciate your answer. Srihari asks, for cybersecurity, there are memberships under ISC2 and ISACA, which you can get after you get a certification with them. Membership with them is enough, or is it still good to have a IEEE senior member?
I don't remember these certifications being good for membership. I would have to go back and look. So I routinely claim these certifications in EB-2NIW cases because they're really strong qualifications. I think I've looked into them for membership before, and it wasn't something I think we can argue. In general, having a certification and then claiming membership based on that certification doesn't tend to work very well because the certifications are based on tests, and the tests test competency, but the tests do not test whether or not you've made outstanding contributions to the field. And it's not good to have IEEE senior member. We've talked about that a couple times in this session. So I don't think any of these are going to be good for your EB-1A case. They are good for an EB-2NIW case, and they can lay the groundwork for future EB-1A profile building. But on their own, they're just not good.
Thank you for replying. I'm sorry for the type I'm using my phone.
No problem.
All right, last question. Rishikesh asks, does having a fee component for fellowship undermine it? EG-AI 2030 fellowship needs an yearly fee of $1,000. Have you used this membership before to claim the membership criterion?
Yeah, so this one is interesting. I do have a couple of people who have applied for this fellowship and are going to submit their EB-1A cases, and we are going to include it in the mix. The organization seems legit. Again, I don't want to endorse them because it's not like I've fully vetted their processes or anything like that. But the people who have gone through this said the vetting process was very rigorous, that this organization has some really high aspirations and really wants to promote AI and the development of AI. So it's fine. I don't know how good it is yet, but it's fine, at least. The payment thing, I think, can raise questions. And so you always need to be prepared to answer those questions. And if anything seems sketchy, I would not join the organization and not pay the fee. Most fellowship organizations do require that you pay a small fee. And normally I think that fee goes towards covering the costs of application review and vetting. Sometimes the fee goes into promoting the organization's purpose and mission. I would get some clarity on why this fee is being charged and what that money is used for. If it's just enriching the people who are running the organization, that's a huge red flag. But if it's going towards covering costs and actually furthering the mission so that this organization can accomplish things and can do things and has its fellows join for a purpose, that's probably fine. And that's actually, it can be an indication of legitimacy rather than fraud, because the best organizations do charge these fees. It's an odd situation, right? Because a lot of times paid media has indications of either being really low quality or sketchy or sometimes outright fraud. Payment for publishing in journals sometimes has that same consideration, but at the same time, all of the top journals require exorbitant fees to publish with them. So in so many of these criteria, there is a built-in pay-to-play scheme, but you need to make sure that it's not purely pay-to-play and that there's a reason for that charge existing and that it is normal and comfortable and expected and not for purposes of obtaining that qualification, but has some objective purpose to further some good in your industry or in your field. So just be careful with it. Again, I haven't vetted this specific organization in detail, but I am working with a couple of applicants right now who have this, and it seemed to be legitimate so far. We will continue to vet it and see. A lot of these organizations are brand new and maybe they start out with the best intentions, but like what I said earlier, you have to vet things in the moment as well. You have to make sure that they remain legitimate, that they remain credible, and that people haven't just seen the money and taken off and are doing sketchy things.
All right, there are two other questions. These are the last two. There's Nani asks, does USCIS check that you are part of an organization for some time, like you did not just join before submitting?
They can check this, and it does come up from time to time. So this is part of the sustained acclaim piece. It's not like you're required to have sustained acclaim in every criteria that you claim. So you don't need to claim that you have been a membership of any extended period of time. Joining a membership organization yesterday still qualifies for the EB-1A case. But just because it qualifies doesn't mean it can't be questioned. You might be questioned on it, and you will need to explain why you have enjoyed sustained acclaim at the top of your field, even if some of the components of your case were done in the last 6 months or so.
Is BCS membership alone sufficient to satisfy the membership criteria, or do we need multiple memberships?
You don't need multiple memberships. One can qualify. For BCS on its own, I would say sometimes it's accepted and sometimes it is not accepted. You can't really have a guarantee with BCS alone. It's still high quality, it's still really good. But if you want more assurances that membership will be accepted, I recommend having a mix of different membership organizations. And I recommend that that mix be both the fellowships and some of the more unique opportunities, like what I was talking with the other person about committee roles or advisory board roles, that kind of thing.
Priam asks, do technical certifications like Azure, AWS, Databricks, or PMP helps?
No, not really. Not for the membership criteria.
All right, this is very last question. Do leadership positions in an organization, lead attorney of an organization, bursar, director of a committee, providing expert leading roles in various committees, establish outstanding contribution?
Potentially. I don't know if USCIS would necessarily agree with that, but if the organization itself is saying that they're vetting for outstanding contribution and they're using some of this as evidence of your outstanding contribution, there's no prohibition on that, and that can be legitimate. So I think people can differ on this question, and reasonable people can differ on this question, and it really will come down to the individual circumstances of your case.
It's just more of a comment. In my experience, the IAT fellowship is stronger based on the artifacts available to meet the plain language requirements and more importantly, to establish she have risen to the top of the field, the IET fellowship indicates it is for those at the forefront.
Yeah, it does have some stronger language in the bylaws than BCS for comparison. It is also, though, not above questioning. There are some holes that USCIS can poke in the IET if it wants to. I would hope that most officers are reasonable and will accept the IET fellowship because it is prestigious. But I have seen it questioned from time to time. So it really depends on the officer. If an officer really wants to deny your membership criterion, they can probably do it. There are so many ways for them to question it and so many ways for them to do it. And that's the frustrating thing, right? You can put together a really strong case. You can have top experts saying that you are also a top expert. You can have 7 criteria claimed, all of which are relatively strong, and an officer can still deny your case. Now, you can try to hold them accountable by taking them to court. You can try to refile and get a different decision, and if it is a strong case, you will likely get approved the second time around. But EB-1A does have that element of arbitrary decision-making, some frustration, and it's really important to have perseverance when you're going through the process. Very, very important.
Thank you for your answers. That's quite insightful.
Yeah, you're very welcome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, everyone.